Welcome back to another episode. Adrienne, are we introducing the name now?
Yeah, let's do it.
So you're on another episode with us, but we're no longer Holy Shift. I know that was fast, right? Holy Shift. We decided to transition our name to the TNA show. Y'all know what TNA stands for, and I guarantee you half of you are giggling right now because you have the same sense of humor Adrienne and I do, but the Totally Not Appropriate show. We just felt that was a little more,
to the point,
representative of our discussions. And while Holy Shift does hold that element of esoteric exploration, we're still going to have that here. But we're coming to find that we're a bit broader spectrum than that. We can still talk about the Salem witch hunts. We can still talk about, obviously, the witch wound. We can talk about astrology, which 2026, Adrienne and I will probably deeply dive into astrology because that's something that is, in my opinion, going to become a much more relevant tool in the coming years. But we're also here to talk about women's health and the challenges that exist within women's health and give them a voice and a platform that perhaps you're not going to find elsewhere.
So we are mystics. We do welcome people who have been in the broom closet, but doesn't that also fall under what society has labeled as totally inappropriate? So we were looking for a handle for our YouTube channel, and there was such a big saturation with Holy Shift. And as we were looking at it, we were realizing that there's some of that holy roller stuff that we didn't really want to be associated with either. I'm not speaking for you, but I am speaking for me in what I was finding for things that were coming up. And TNA, I mean, come on. We had a episode called Fire Crotch.
I actually think to this point, it's one of the more popular episodes too.
Well, because, and that's it.
Yeah, we're talking about something that's often spoken about behind closed doors, and maybe even not spoken about behind closed doors, just kept to yourself privately because it feels like such a, I don't want to say inappropriate, but taboo subject, which is, obviously the changes that you experience below the belly button, if you will, through different chapters of life, through different seasons of hormonal shifts. And it was very relevant, as we have seen with the downloads, to a lot of women and their real lived experience.
And that's what we wanted this show to be, the real lived experience, which does involve why do we have a hard time having conversations as women and being in sisterhood, right? It does involve what the hell is going on from the belly button down. We are not a sum of parts. We are this beautiful alchemical lived experience, and our needs change in different cycles and seasons of our life. Our bodies change. Things that once felt taboo might not feel taboo now because of how you're stepping into who you are. Sometimes it's a fear of judgment, right? So all of these things are still completely appropriate for the gift that we wanted this podcast to be for people. We wanted it to be essentially a safe space to be able to have hard conversations or eye-opening conversations. And a lot of this goes against the grain because, let's face it, talking about what's going on in your regime is generally not accepted in most social circles. Hence the issue I've had as a practitioner for so much of my life, because it's something that maybe you tell your trusted girlfriend, but in the experience of Fire Crotch, you might not even want to tell your best girlfriend because you might be fearful of judgment, right? So this is a judgment-free zone here. And no, I'm not quoting Planet Fitness. Oh my God, did you see the headline the other guy, the naked guy that went into Planet Fitness because it was a judgment-free zone?
What?
I just can't make this stuff up. He was asked and then forcibly removed from a Planet Fitness because he went in naked because it was a judgment-free zone. Anyway, that's essentially the environment we want to create here on this show.
Is 2025 in the United States. Does anybody else feel like they are truly living the Truman Show? I spoke to my parents last night, and the number of times my father has said, "Never in my lifetime did I think." And I was like, do you finally see that there is theater that's happening routinely. I really genuinely believe this is going to probably upset somebody. Hopefully it'll plant a seed of, personal reflection and exploration. I believe that, but, like, I think we're finally starting to see that politics are theater.
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood, outside of what we see as theater, is theater, right? They are literally paid actors, and the ones that choose to go against the grain and step outside the narrative are outcasts from the Hollywood cool club, if you will. I said to my dad last night, so are you looking for the door yet? And he was like, what do you mean? And I was like, welcome to the Truman Show. Like, you should go back and watch that movie, given everything that's happened in the last 5 years, because it really paints a different picture. Like social media influencers, like, I don't want to buy your hormone balancing supplement when half the country can't put food on the table and keep a roof over their head. Or if I buy this supplement, are you donating any of your funds to like a cause, a collective cause for humanity? So changes are the only constant that we can actually rely on. And Adrienne did ask at one point, well, can we change the name? And I think my response was, why can't we? I think we need more people that are willing to be like, I loved it when I started, but I don't love it now. So I'm going to pivot, because that's, again, the only constant that we can rely on is change. And why not lean into it and flow instead of against it with resistance?
Well, and our mission is still the same. Our vision is still the same. But as we started recording these episodes and we started to like riff a little bit before we would hit record and then we would hit record, we started like seeing that our identity as a show was different than what we had originally thought all of our conversations would be centered around. There's been an evolution that's taken place. And I think that's really important because, like, I've been going through my own evolution this year too. So, changing the name of the show, I feel like fits with everything else that's happened in my own life this year. Moon Essence has been in existence in its 8th year. And yet I stepped through the birth portal having my son in October of 24. For those of you who aren't familiar with me and my story, I stepped through the birth portal with my son in October of 24. And I came out on the other side and nothing in what I was doing felt aligned anymore the way that I was doing it. And there was a huge crisis there. And I was like, oh my gosh, everything that I thought I was doing, I don't want to do it like that anymore. And that doesn't feel good to me. And oh my gosh, like I'm so established at this point. Can I change midstream now? And so most of 25 for me, and the year of the snake, that is all about shedding the skin that no longer fits.
I'm so glad you mentioned, because I think it's a reminder we all need. We are coming through a collective year that required all of us, not just some of us, all of us, to literally shed things that no longer serve us. People, places, things, identities, professions. I have to remind myself of that. Sorry to cut you off, but I feel like that's a very important. Let's illuminate the fact that Adrienne is talking about the year of the snake and what it actually represents and how it prepares us for the year of the horse, which is coming.
And it's going to be beautiful because the year of the horse is all about momentum, right? It's the fire horse. There's an ignition and a creation and a doing and an action, right? But you can't take action when you're still in ill-fitting shoes and you're playing it small and you're not stepping into your truth and all of these kinds of things. And so this show has always been about being able to have conversations that you can't find in other places. That's always been the root of this show. And as we have recorded episodes and really had just a fucking blast doing it, the things that brought us the most joy, because let's face it, we're both air signs and we like talking about lots of things. Evolution took place just throughout our organic conversations. And we realized that we still want to be that place and that space to be able to have conversations about everything from the witch trials to fire crotch. But we want to be able to bring more of these. And the name Holy Shift really felt very restrictive. And honestly, and this is just my perspective, we welcome yours, is like today I feel like there's so much narrative and there's so much rhetoric around religion that I really feel like being able to take a sidestep from that and be able to honor spirituality, but not with something that sounds attached to religion, feels more aligned to me.
It's
I
a
don't know about
subject
you.
of polarity. So, like,
Yes.
obviously, religion is very much a narrative that increases divisiveness amongst people. And I think that every element or every avenue of divisiveness that can be activated today is being activated today because we are much weaker separated than we are together as one. Irregardless of who you believe in and where you think they live or come from or what your political beliefs are, although I strongly encourage and invite you to really take a step back and look at our political system as a whole. I don't consider myself to be right or left. I'm one of those people that can very much stand in the center and go, okay, Gemini, welcome to it. This is the energy that pisses everyone off. Okay, I see these traditionally democratic principles as being really valuable. And I can see these traditionally conservative, views being valuable. And I can see them together as being beneficial for the whole. Therefore, I'm not going to choose one versus the other. And at this point, I think they all suck. So I don't think any of them deserve our vote. I don't think we have anyone riding in on a white horse that's here to save us. I think everybody is playing for the same team. I think, again, it's all theater. I actually think that's starting to take root and wind in a lot of the conservative communities too. They're going like, hey, the promises that were made to us as a country are not being fulfilled. And I'm so tired of hearing, well, it's a big job.
Yeah.
Well, okay, you've got people's literal livelihoods, like their ability to keep a roof over their head and put food on the table, relying on you executing. So I don't care what party you're plugged into, and this is not a political podcast, I promise, but I don't care what party you're plugged into or what religion you subscribe to. If you aren't here for the greater good of humanity, there's the door. Don't let it hit you in the ass on the way out.
Well, and people are waking up to how that's all been positioned. And I do feel like on both sides, there are starting to be more voices that are going, I don't know about this, or this seems a little off to me.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping there's going to be more unity around those voices going forward. But I'm with you. I stand in the middle as well. I've always considered myself riding in the middle because I can see both sides. Maybe this is my Libra rising, right? But I've always seen that there are ways to have bipartisan,
which isn't even a term that we use anymore. Like we talked about
that's
this.
it.
Yeah.
It used to be very much part of the political conversation, and now it's like non-existent. And I live in Maine. And historically, I've always been very proud of the fact that we've elected representation that has been leaders in bipartisan legislation. That has shifted a little more recently, but in general, that is something that, Maine separated from Massachusetts over being able to give free Black people the ability to own land.
Yeah.
That was one of the reasons that Maine separated from Massachusetts, because there was, for as quote unquote blue as Massachusetts is, like historically, it was land ownership and the ability to essentially be self-authority around what felt good to you in terms of how you were living your life was a big reason why Maine pulled out. And I've always been very proud of that. We've had kind of an up and down history with it since then, but that's something that I feel like if more of us can start seeing the world through other viewpoints, putting ourselves in the position of what it means to be a human.
Yeah.
Other people's lived experience. And instead of the blame game, be like, hey, there's a lot of us, like, I can't tell you the number of people in like mothers groups and things like that I see posting things like, what are you doing for side hustles that you can do as a stay-at-home mom because we're having a hard time living on one income, but I can't afford to go back to work because childcare is so high. Like, how many people are in that?
We are not here to soapbox about childcare, Taylor. I am reminding myself that needs to be another episode because this is like one of those, there are certain things that are just like hot buttons for me.
Yeah.
And I was a single mom.
Yes, I was a single mom too at one point because I moved away from my folks. So like I didn't have a social network where I was physically located, and I was very reliant on being able to have help. And I just look at how much it costs now, how much I was making, how much I make now. Like there's a reason that I work from home and I juggle my son with my teenage daughter. And again, this can be a whole podcast. They want us to have more babies, but they're not giving us any infrastructure to be able to support the ability to care for them.
It was $400 a week to have Sydney cared for in a small at-home daycare. $400 a week.
Same here.
And when a local community daycare opened up where the classroom was a bit larger, he was around the age of 2. So I felt comfortable making that transition, right? Like I was lucky enough to have people to watch him up to the age of 2 in a home setting. But when he turned 2, $400 a week, guys, that's what, $1,600 a month? That's a mortgage payment. You know, so like that was just not something that was feasible to and for me. So I transitioned him to a larger community-based daycare. It was $250 a week. Okay, that felt like a steal at that point in time, you know, but as a single income family, it required me, I missed out on a lot of mothering to make sure that I could be both mom and dad and primary breadwinner and provide my son with the type of life that I wanted to provide him with. You know, and so many people, this really got my goat. Well, it was a choice, but it really wasn't. You know, like, sure, if we want to look at it through a very binary lens of like doing it versus not doing it, you know, and having an abortion versus not having an abortion, like it's really not such a simple decision. For, you know, the longest time, I was like, I could never be a single mom.
Well, and now we don't even have that choice in the majority of the country. I said it.
It's so mind-blowing to me, you know, like I don't understand why we would put someone in a position to potentially have a baby where the baby's not going to get the resources that it needs. Like we have to talk about these things. Like there's potential resentment that could come from mom. You know, like there's lack of resources that could be provided. Now we're creating an entire story around struggle that perhaps wouldn't be there. And shit happens. You know, not everybody is not calculated and not careful, right? Like there are people that take the proper precautions and still get pregnant.
Well, and there are people who think they're in a relationship with a partner they can depend on, and then the partner gets scared and runs away because there isn't a ton of male accountability when it comes to that either. But we could do a whole podcast on this. So like, I just think that it's really important to recognize that circumstances and things change, and everybody doesn't always know everybody's full story. And so you can't judge a book by its cover. And so as we've had more and more of these conversations and we've started down some of these rabbit holes, which obviously we can go down very easily. And this is one of the reasons why I love doing this with Taylor, is the fact that we both can go down these holes together. And
that'll sound good on the replay. We can both go down these holes.
Is that today's drinking game? Okay. But we can go down these rabbit holes and we can take expanded viewpoints of like, hey guys, like here are things to kind of consider and think about and all of that. And we realized that we could expand the scope of this show and this story that we're telling in a way that was really meaningful for people and to touch on the topics that nobody else wants to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about change too. I feel like, yes, for you, Adrienne, please correct me if I'm wrong. Like it's been the predominant theme. This time last year, I was reflecting on this yesterday, like literally year to day. I decided I was closing my business. Right? It was the Gemini full moon that really did it for me last year, where I was like, okay, I think I've come to a completion with tailored well-being, and I think it's time for me to move on. That was not an easy decision to make. I still get people that are like, I loved your name. And I'm like, yeah, I loved my name too. And I loved what my practice represented. And at the same time, tailored well-being was not constructed to grow alongside me. It had a focal point and purpose, which was
Mhm.
very much centered on integrative and functional health. And all of that information still very much exists within me, and I can access it whenever I need it. But the tools that I have today are 1,000 times more sophisticated,
Mhm.
and I needed to be able to grow within an organization, a company that would grow alongside me. And tailored well-being was not constructed for medical astrology. It wasn't constructed for herbalism, astro herbalism to be specific. It wasn't constructed for quantum principles and cosmology. It was constructed, it gained, traction in the integrative field. And I was like, that's just not who I am anymore. I think that version of me was built to survive. And
Mhm.
in this next chapter of life, I'm transitioning. It's very uncomfortable to transition out of survival mode
Oh, it is.
when your entire
Absolutely.
identity is built around it. Like, even when you're like, I am leaps and bounds away from who I used to be, not that I'm trying to run from her, change, right? It's still very uncomfortable to sit in I think maybe you're in this place too, Adrienne. For the first time in my life, I've slowed down.
Yes, I witnessed this. And
Yeah.
it is that for me too. Like at the beginning of the year, I was in my postpartum cocoon, or I was trying to be. I had some things.
Bitches wrecked it. I don't even want to. I'll be the one that says it. If you hear this, you're a bitch. Okay. Like, I have no problem saying it. If you're one of the people, you know who you are, that decided to act a fool while Adrienne was out on maternity leave, I got my eyes on you. Like, that was shitty. Karma is real.
So, what she's talking about is that I had spent a lot of time training so that I would have employees that could carry the early part of my transition essentially into motherhood again, and that I would be able to, like, hopefully stay almost 12 weeks home with my son.
That is
And
not a lot to ask, by the way. 12 weeks is a drop in the bucket when you really think about it.
well, I was back to making phone calls at 6 weeks post from my bed. So thank you to anyone who's listening who honored my scary hair and the coos of my son in the bed next to me. It was some of the happiest work that I had done with
Yeah.
him all snuggled up next to me. But at the same time, like, I had to put energy out that I didn't have, and they quit. And so that was really hard, and it made a fundamental shift in my practice. I didn't realize how going on maternity leave, and any of you who've worked, particularly self-employed, but even in the W-2 world, it's like when you get married, if you change your name, you disappear all of a sudden for a while, and then people start to figure out who you are. Maternity leave is kind of the same way. So even though my practice had been open for 7 years, it was like me not being present and on all the time is like I disappeared off the face of the planet. And I had a really hard year trying to essentially resuscitate my practice. And it forced me to surrender. And it's so funny because, like, the word I had picked for 2025 was surrender. And I was thinking that it was through the lens of my body is healing. I need to accept that my body is healing, and I only have so much energy and capacity, and honoring that. But really, it was so much more than that. I had to surrender and let mother speak through me. Like, I needed to surrender, and
We're not actually in control. And I think that is the thing
that
that I have come to the conclusion of. Like, there is this false sense that we have control. And sure, can we choose the donut or the apple? Yeah, like, that's a form of tangible control that I can get behind. Like, sure. And I'm not going to, tisk you for the donut and praise you for the apple. Like, they're both lessons, they're both classrooms, and they're both going to guide you somewhere. But when it comes to this entire path we know as personal evolution, we're not in control. And our job, our calling is to follow the nudges and the pings that make no sense, that absolutely send every bell, whistle, and press every button in that emergency safety system off.
absolutely.
I don't know about you. I imagine this resonates, but I felt like I have been walking a path blind for the last. Yes, I'm like synced into medical astrology and you're a cycle alchemist. Yes, I am like fully rooted in astro herbalism, right? And you have the variety of herbalisms that you support and practice. Yes, I'm a student in quantum and you're doing acutonics. We do a lot of similar things. And at the same time, it's still developing, and that's super fucking uncomfortable.
Yes. Well, it's funny that you say it that way because, like, I feel like I haven't wanted to surrender that control for the last couple of years.
Yep.
I would go to shows and I would say things to I hate even calling her an assistant because, God, she really is so much more than that.
I used to call Sam my right-hand woman, literally.
Yeah.
My work wife.
I referred to Kirsten as the great and powerful Oz.
Yep.
Like, I would be lost without her, and I'm so grateful for her. But I kept saying to her, I was like, I feel like I go to shows and it just looks like word vomit all over my table because I've got the acutonics and I've got the steaming and I've got this and I've got that. And like, this is all of what I do, but there's nothing cohesive about it. Or
But
I
are we
ask,
supposed to be cohesive?
well, but it was more the fact that I was resisting the fact that my identity was changing.
Fair.
I'm the person that doesn't like my food touching on a plate, guys. So like I was trying to keep everything in the separate buckets.
Yeah.
Because it just didn't feel like it should be like enmeshed with each other.
Mhm.
And some of that was because I was teaching for the Acutonics Institute. And so like that felt like it had to be separate from everything else that I was doing. And so anyway, long story short, for 2 years, I would go to shows and I would advertise myself. I'm going to use the formal terms of brand cohesion, but really it was just like, I wasn't clear on how I was articulating who I was.
I feel like brand representation is a lot like personal representation. I don't care what any business coach tells you. Your business is an extension of you.
Yes.
Period. It is like a child. You have grown it from its infancy. You have watched it crawl, walk, and run. You've nurtured it from the ground up. You're hopefully providing it with good encouragement and obviously nourishment for it to grow big and strong. It is a part of you. So when someone asks me, well, tell me about Taylor, I'm like, you want 1 or 2 sentences? Like, that's I'm sorry. Like, I garden and I shuffle and I am going to be a beekeeper. That's like my new adventure, right?
That's awesome.
And I'm an astrologer and I have a former life in hospitals in the Western medical world and. So like my brand is the same way and trying to get myself to be like, in 2 sentences, describe yourself. Sorry, I can't.
Well, and that's where I was at too. And I felt like my lack of coherence was really showing up in everything around me. And it was like the birth of my son, like brought it all to this very real level of you have limited capacity. Who are you now? Who are you?
I mean, predominantly your mom right now, right? And you have an opportunity. And I say this knowing that I didn't take a second or third chance. I chose to forego having another baby after a very long, period of indecisiveness. But you have the opportunity to be the mom that you were not the first go round because you couldn't be.
Yes.
And
I'm so grateful for the fact that my business is set up the way that it is, that I have the ability, like after this recording, I'm going to flow out into the main living space of my house and I'm going to pick up my almost 15-month-old son.
Who is such a chubby, fucking cute little cabbage patch. Oh my God, his cheeks.
He's so cute. He's so fun.
He's got the roundest face.
He does.
Just so cute.
He's adorable and he's so much fun. And like, I treasure the fact that I can work and I can go spend that time with him literally seamlessly back and forth. And I mean, a lot of that is also by the grace of my 14-year-old who will watch him while I do things like this. But, it has invited me to really think about, how do I schedule my days? What do I want them to look like? If I could choose my perfect day, what would that look like?
Yeah.
And honestly, my perfect days look like a balance between doing some work and being able to watch him crawl, which he's finally doing. Man, that boy just wanted to observe the world and sit on his butt, and he did not want to move around, and now he's crawling. So like, it's not that he couldn't, he was just so observant to the world around him, and I could just watch him watch the world forever because just watching his little brain soak it all in was magic. And these are moments that like I regret and that I didn't have with my daughter because I was working so hard to pay for the person who was taking care of her and for the life I was trying to build for her. And so, this past year, stepping into the year of the snake, I chose my word surrender before I even realized that it was kind of the thematic element of the entire year. And I realized that birth had made me a new person, that stepping through that portal and that rite of passage, that I needed to flow through the world differently. The energy and the tempo and all of those things needed to be different. And man, it's been painful. Taylor's heard my voice notes going, I don't know what the hell I'm doing right now. It's hard because I've always been an action-oriented, clear, create a plan, execute the plan kind of person.
I think for you too, because this is very similar to me and I see a lot of similarities between us. When I don't feel like I'm plugged into a purpose, it's like removing oxygen from my environment. So when I am not sitting on the phone holding space for someone else, I'm going to call them gifts. Like I'm allowing my gifts to step front and center because like we talked about in one of our previous episodes, so much of what I do happens in the unspoken and the unseen. So when I'm sitting on the phone with somebody and they're coming to me and they consider themselves to be complex like they do with you, and I'm witnessing them in their journey and I'm listening to their story and holding space for them, and then we're coming together and we're collaboratively putting together a plan of life. I'm not calling it a plan of care because it's a plan of life that's going to grow with you. If I'm not doing that, I fall severely depressed. Like there's no other way. And this year has been very hit or miss with that. I'm obviously, just like you, in a very, what we consider to be niche market, but it's a market that's a lot of people are going to buy after in the coming years. It's able to answer questions and provide support in ways that what's available to us cannot. I think for you, when you're not plugged into purpose, it can feel a lot like you're wandering with your eyes closed, and that can be really difficult too.
I hate that feeling of feeling adrift. And especially like there's this, and this is the Aquarian humanitarian aspect of myself. When I know that there are people out there suffering and I help them, I just feel like I'm failing somehow. So this being still and surrendering and sitting with and allowing to be spoken through was very hard for me this year. It hit all of the growth edges that I didn't want to look at and needed all at the same time. And what has emerged on the other side of it is I actually have some cohesive thoughts in terms of my shit all does fit together, but I just hadn't gained clarity as to what that looked like. And so, Taylor referred to me as a cycle alchemist earlier. This is what I have now chosen to call myself because I feel like it's a better representation of what I do. I work in the cycles and seasons inside of your body, in your life, in your lifetime, and how that fits into your intergenerational patterns that we carry with us. Like cycle alchemy is what I do. I just have other tools that I bring to the table in these conversations. But, I have a group called Rebel Remembered that nourishes my soul. And because we talk about it is a community space where we can talk about where we have stuck energy in our system. How does it end up showing as symptoms? And then we start asking ourselves these questions around like, where do I give my power away to other people? And these are really profound conversations for a lot of people.
Undermine how powerful those types of conversations are. They're like, why I've got issues. Why am I talking about this? Well, what metabolizes every element of your entire lived experience? Your gut. Yep. Come on, just because the physician that you're going to doesn't see the connection between the two doesn't mean that it exists. It's like when people are like, I have chronic migraines. Okay, well, how much pressure are you taking on and how much activity do you have that exists neck above instead of neck below? Your body's trying to build a bridge between the two by getting you back into your body, and you're choosing to overlook and ignore it and numb the signal. Now, that's not to say that I haven't utilized things to numb the signal during a migraine. Like sometimes you just can't function. But that also means that I'm not going to ignore that it's bubbling to the surface. Why is it there? What is going on? What's the pattern? Is there a pattern? And Alchemy is a quintessential word in medicine. You just don't hear it because physicians are not trained in alchemy.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They're not trained, guys. Like I made a post the other day. I think I sent you a voice memo about it in my community. Somebody took the advice to not take a particular adaptogen while pregnant because an RN in their life was like, well, that's not approved for pregnancy. Bitch, but Unisom is like, let's talk about this. You know what I mean? So, okay, like how much herbal training have you had?
Right.
None? Okay, that's what I thought I heard, right? Do you know how many drug herb interactions I've had to study?
Yeah, exactly. Well, we talked about this the other day around like, I'm not going to walk into a surgical suite because I'm not trained as an OBGYN to cut people open. However, the same is true for my toolkit versus theirs. Like, you have a certain set of training, I have a certain set of training. It doesn't make one superior to the other.
No.
What it means is that they both should be used in synergy with one another because there is a time and place for an allopathic approach. But more often than not, there's a shitload of stops on that fucking bus before you need to get to the allopathic trained person. And if you're listening to the signals and signs that your body is giving to you when she's whispering and talking at a normal level before she gets to the screaming level, because that's what sends you to the doctor, because now it's inconveniencing your life and you don't want to deal with it anymore. And they give you a pill that blankets the whole situation and the cycle repeats itself. And then we can't figure out why people are getting to the perimenopausal years and their bodies are quote unquote exploding.
Also, can we please acknowledge once again that perimenopause starts much earlier than is recognized in the medical paradigm? And
Yes.
it's a problem, right? As does menopause, much earlier than it's recognized in the medical paradigm. Also a problem. We really need to start researching our women and then making proper adjustments on a broader scale so that we can support women having good experiences into the 50s that we're currently quoting.
Yep.
You know, but here's one of the changes that's really going to occur for me in 2026 is I'm not going to be quiet anymore. Oh, okay, like I'm the herbalist, I'm the weird one. Actually, no, you're out of your lane. So, like, I'm not going to step in your lane, but I'm going to call you out when you step in mine because this conversation needs to get wider, right? People are afraid to participate in care that you and I offer because of what they've been told by uneducated health professionals.
Yes. And I think that is one of the things that gets my goat the most is like, I'll see posts in like mothers groups and stuff. Anyone recommend a holistic OBGYN? And I was like, I don't really think that they're, I can only think of one person in my network, one that fits that actual description. And she brings sound tools into your pap smear. Okay. I don't know a single other quote unquote holistic OBGYN that actually truly fits the bill of what holistic truly means. There's a difference between holistic and natural, right? There's a big difference. There's a difference between holistic and natural. There are people that use those words interchangeably. You're asking for very different things. And if you're putting natural and OBGYN in the same label, it doesn't exist because that's not how they are trained. So unless they pursue continuing education,
which most of them do not, unless it's a required CEU,
then you're not getting what you're looking for. And really what it is that people are asking for with that label is they are asking for somebody who's going to see them as an entire person and make recommendations based on symptoms, ideally without prescription medication. Like this is literally what they're looking for, but they think they have to go to somebody that has DR in front of their name in order to know anything. And
guys, that's a system. I mean, all respect to people who have gone through medical school. The ones
absolutely.
that I really like, admire, appreciate, a lot of them have left the field because they've seen, you know, the forest for the trees. Like they're very well aware of what they signed up for and they want nothing to do with it. No disrespect for the people that have put their time in, that are in ERs saving people. I feel like we constantly have to put these disclaimers out because it's very easy to take people's words out of context.
Yes.
And at the same time, you know, I don't even know where I was going with that. Like, fly.
And at the same time, you have people who have as many years, if not more years of study than somebody that has MD and walks around with DR in front of their name that does not have the alphabet soup before or after their name that can tell you the wildest things about your system that your doctor never could.
Well, and that's just it, right? Like a DR only comes from earning it through a certain channel.
Yes.
Whereas herbalist, I'm just going to take this term, is earned from multiple different channels. And yes, there's variance from community to clinical, from indigenous to Western allopathic to eclectic. There are different branches, but guess what? They all bring an abundance of understanding to the table. And most of the time, they're trained in a variety of things like plant energetics, people, patterning, ecosystem understanding and recognition, like things, again, that you're not going to learn in medical school because they understand that the body cannot be reduced down to a system and a part.
Yes. And I think that's where our medical system is currently reflecting the ecosystem of what's in our world right now, is that things are being reduced to a sum of parts. And as we have these conversations on this show, Taylor and I realized that Holy Shift was too restrictive. It wasn't honoring the fact that we are not a sum of parts. We are an alchemical ecosystem that is influenced by a whole bunch of things: our socioeconomics, our political climate, our stage of life, our all of these things. And if we were going to have meaningful conversations about people's real existence and lived experience, we had to evolve and shift and change. And how fitting is it for us to make this change in our name at the very end of the year of the snake? As we move closer to the year of the fire horse.
Yeah. I'm really excited to see what comes in 2026. I know enough now to understand that my personal astrology and the collective astrology, granted, you can exist outside of your astrology, and I want to make sure that I always say that. You can mature beyond it. And I think it's really important to utilize it as a tool in your toolkit. I do understand, that I'm still in a solar return year that will again initiate in June of 2026, but I am still in a solar return year. I'm in the second quarter that has required a lot of reflection and redistribution of energy and, an understanding of where I'm going as opposed to having a clear path that has been forged for me. So I think it's really important to remember as we move into 2026, the year doesn't get to determine the success of where it is you're going. And at the same time, there are things that will absolutely influence what the outcome of your year looks like. And it's important to always utilize those tools. But I'm excited to see what 2026 holds for myself and for Adrienne in regards to like professional growth and, continued collaboration. Or not even a goal, an aspiration for this podcast is to get it to the point where we have some sponsorship, and we're reaching a broad audience and we're having conversations that you're interested in engaging with. So I'm just going to throw that out here right now. And I understand that the podcast world is saturated and there are a lot of people screaming for your attention. So if you go ahead. Yeah. If you choose to make the TNA podcast, Totally Not Appropriate, once was Holy Shift, part of your routine listening, we appreciate you. And you can always expect that we're going to have multiple tentacles of conversation. We started this entire podcast talking about our change in name and went, I think, 5 million directions. But that's the whole point. Adrienne and I want to be a conversation. This is what we sound like off mic. This is what we talk about when the camera isn't rolling. Yes. And I imagine these are all topics of conversation that pique the interest of many women who are having conversations privately with their girlfriends or even in their head. So our goal is to bring those to the table and expand the mic, so to speak.
Yes. And we want to hear from you too. We want to hear like what kinds of things are rolling around in your head that you don't think other people are talking about, because they're probably conversations that Taylor and I have had at some level that we're like, oh, what are we going to talk about today?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And sometimes we actually hit record on something a little different than what we thought we were going to record, simply because of what in the headlines or whatever is lighting us up that day.
Yeah. And 2026, I'm going to put this out there. Hopefully, Adrienne is in agreement with this, but I have been off of social media for 16 days now. Full transparency, I don't miss Instagram. Like, I miss some of the conversation that comes through Instagram, but I don't miss the platform as a whole. And I've been spending a lot of time curating posts for Substack without bumpers, if you will. Like, I'm talking about all aspects of my personal experience. I didn't want to make my Substack just astrology because that's not who I am, right? Or just herbalism because I'm so much more than those two titles and they're a big piece of the person that I am, So I would like to make this podcast, which is going to be uploaded to YouTube, a longer format piece of content that Adrienne and I can use to really reach the people that are seeking our services too. I would love to support more people in 2026 in utilizing decumbent, which is medical astrology, and supporting people on their journey with herbs and teaching people how to make tinctures. It's so fun to make your own medicine and place an intention behind it. So one of my goals for this podcast is to reach more people and invite those that are listening to invest in themselves in a different way. I think for both of us, you sit in a classroom when you invest in our services and you go to school on you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, 100%. I will often tell people that I'm an educator with practitioner skills.
Yeah.
Because one of the biggest travesties is the collective lack of education that women receive around how to care for their bodies. Yeah. Sometimes they don't even know how their bodies work. In the case of my fertility client, who she and her husband had been trying to have a baby for 3 years and were trying in the 5 days before her bleed every month. Right. So like these are colossal missteps in the education that is honestly our birthright and we don't receive. And so I have always thought of myself as an educator with practitioner skills because I want to give you tools that you can walk away from our conversation that day and try.
Okay, but keyword try, you have to implement. And I think that's another larger conversation or tone to most of our conversations moving forward. Yes, you can have all of the information, knowledge, and tools at your feet. But if you don't take action, nothing's going to change. Just because you pop a pill and the symptoms are gone doesn't mean anything has changed. Real tangible change comes from understanding the multiple routes at the experience that you're traversing and then not cutting them off, tending to them. Most roots don't need to be severed. They need to be fertilized.
Exactly.
Symptoms don't need to be silenced. They need to be heard and integrated.
I mean, think about it like a plant. A lot of Eastern practitioners think of themselves like gardeners. Yeah. Right. You're not going to look at the plant and go, what the fuck is wrong with you? You're going to look at the plant and be like, hey, buddy, I see that your leaves are starting to turn brown. Do you need a little bit more water? Do you need a little bit more sunshine? Should I make sure that you're seeing sunshine a little bit more of the day, right? You're looking at the conditions that the plant is living in, and you're trying to change the parameters so that the plant will thrive. You are a big plant. It's really not that hard, right? But we have to be able to look at what is being communicated to us in terms of, do I need more of this or less of that? Is it how I'm caring for myself during my bleed, and fill in the blank, right? Like, what is it that we're doing or not doing that is creating the conditions for the symptoms that we're seeing, and then making an adjustment, which means we have to take action. So coming into the year of the horse, it's all about action.
Yep. It's interesting. My goal is to get every person that I work with gardening, even if it's just in one pot, and so many people are like, it's an extra responsibility. And I'm like, that's exactly what you say about yourself. So we're off to a great start. You're already recognizing the stories that you carry about what it means to care for something and deeply care for something. If that plant dies, it's on you. So why don't we start looking at what you do to tend to the plant so that we can then translate it to you tending to your own ecosystem?
Well, then maybe I should try my hand at orchids again, because darn it, I just cannot, no matter what I do.
Indoor or fucking outdoor. And I feel like indoor adds a whole nother element that I'm still trying to master. I'm talking like outdoor. Let's stick some parsley. Like, what season are we in? What are the growing needs? How many hours of sun? How many hours of shade? Like, what type of fertilizer is necessary? You're no different because you're going to change through the 4 seasons too. So, that is, I think, an overarching theme for Adrienne and I. Like, what season is the system in, and how can we nourish the system based on the season?
Yes.
So before we go off on another tangent, because we're really great at that, I'm just going to like lock it in. And I hope you guys have had a beautiful holiday, whatever it is you're celebrating. And remember, we're still in winter. You don't have to race into 2026. You're actually completely mismatched in that energy, most of you, unless your solar return starts in the beginning of the year, then we have a whole different conversation. But most of you are mismatching your energy and it needs to show up later on in the season, early spring. So you don't need to run into 2026. You don't need to spend money on things that you're not actually going to execute and utilize. We're in winter, and I encourage you to treat yourself as if we're in winter.
Enjoy the season, guys. Pull inward the way that we're invited to in the winter, and really sit with, what do I want out of, and give yourself permission to allow for that change to happen. Change is uncomfortable. We've talked about this in a past episode, but if you really listen to the voice inside of you in terms of what feels in alignment with your heart and what feels like swimming upstream against the current, your body will tell you what feels in alignment. And I invite you to sit with those things as we're sitting in this more hibernation energy in winter, and really reflect on what is here to be shed at the end of this year of the snake. And I keep referring to the year of the snake because I feel like energetically it fits more than the Gregorian calendar of January 1 being,
if you don't know what that is, go look at it. Go look at it.
I've always felt very in alignment with the Chinese New Year because I was born on the new moon in February. So I was born on Chinese New Year. So I've always felt very in alignment with the energetic changes that come with the shifts.
Astrology aligns with that too. I mean, many systems do. So
absolutely. So, sit with this energy, sit with yourself, see and ask yourself some really truthful, uncomfortable questions around what it is that needs to be shed. What are you letting go of in order to clear?
Let it fucking go.
Yes.
Please.
Composting energy is productive.
Yes. Just let it fucking go. Let them go. Let it go. Let the identity go. You can get another job.
Yes. You can get another relationship.
There's only one of you. I say that to my son all the time when he's like, why aren't you letting me do this? I'm like, I can't replace you, honey. And until you understand the consequence of your action or inaction, this is the boundary that's going to sit. So be willing to place boundaries in your own world as an act of self-love.
Ooh, beautiful final thought.
All right, guys. We'll catch you on the next TNA podcast. Wink, wink. I'm never going to be able to say that without laughing. Until next time, guys, stay well.